What if the American Revolution had failed? Part 1. The rise of revolution and the tensions that led to it 1. The early seeds of discontent. The American colonies began as an extension of the British Empire in North America, with 13 colonies stretching from New England to Georgia. Each of these colonies had its own local government, but they all remained under British rule. For over 150 years the colonies were loyal to the Crown, but tensions slowly started building. Economic factors played a major role in this growing dissatisfaction. The colonies had prospered under the relatively lax policies of salutary neglect, a British policy of avoiding strict enforcement of parliamentary laws in the colonies. However, after the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 1763, Britain found itself in deep debt and began to enforce taxes and laws on the colonies which sparked outrage. The Stamp Act, 1765, Townshend Acts, 1767, and the infamous Tea Act, 1773, were seen as direct attempts to control the economic and political affairs of the colonies, leading to widespread protests. The colonists, who were used to relative autonomy, now felt their rights were being infringed upon by a distant British government. 2. The spark of rebellion. In 1775, tensions erupted into violence with the battles of Lexington and Concord, marking the start of the American Revolution. The conflict initially began over issues of taxation and governance, but it quickly escalated as British troops clashed with colonial militias. The Continental Congress met in 1774, and by 1776 the colonies were ready to declare independence. On July 4th, the Declaration of Independence was signed, with Thomas Jefferson stating that the colonies had the right to throw off a tyrannical government. Key figures like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Paine became the faces of the revolution, advocating for freedom, democracy, and a new form of governance outside of British monarchy. Part 2. The failure of the revolution. What went wrong? 1. The British military superiority. One of the key reasons the American Revolution failed in this alternate timeline was Britain's overwhelming military advantage. The British Empire had one of the strongest armies in the world, experienced generals, and a powerful navy. The colonies, on the other hand, had little experience in large-scale warfare and lacked a professional army. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, was largely composed of poorly trained militias and volunteers. Without crucial victories and leadership, the British forces might have been able to crush the resistance early on. A lack of resources, weapons, and consistent support from colonial citizens could have led to the army's collapse. 2. The role of foreign aid and its absence. A significant factor in the success of the American Revolution was the foreign aid the colonies received, most notably from France. Without French support both financially and militarily, the colonists would have struggled even more. If France and Spain had chosen not to intervene, the Americans would have been isolated. British naval superiority would have made it difficult for the colonies to receive any external help, and their chance of survival would have drastically diminished. 3rd, internal divisions and colonial loyalties. Not all colonists were in favour of rebellion. A significant portion of the population, known as loyalists, remained loyal to the British Crown. These loyalists provided crucial intelligence to the British forces and even fought alongside them. The lack of unified support for independence would have weakened the American cause and hindered the revolution's chances of success. Divisions within the colonies would have led to a fragmented resistance. Without unity, the colonies would have struggled to present a cohesive front, ultimately leading to a collapse of the movement. Part 3. The aftermath. A British-controlled America won. The political repercussions. Had the revolution failed, the colonies would have likely remained part of the British Empire. Instead of forming an independent nation, the colonies may have been subjected to more direct control by the British Crown. This would have meant harsher laws, stricter taxation, and fewer freedoms. The colonial governments would likely have been replaced or overruled by royal governors, effectively ending any semblance of local autonomy. British Parliament would have continued to impose policies, including the Intolerable Acts, and the colonies would have faced a more authoritarian rule. 2. Slavery and race relations. The issue of slavery might have remained entrenched for much longer. Without the pressure from an independent American government or the external influence of abolition movements, slavery could have continued to expand, especially in the southern colonies. Native American relations would have been controlled by British policy, possibly resulting in the continued displacement of indigenous populations as the British sought to expand westward for land and resources. Third, impact on slavery and the Civil War. With the American Revolution not providing a foundation for future anti-slavery movements, the issue of slavery could have remained unresolved for much longer. Slavery might have even expanded into newer territories, leading to even more tension between different regions of the colonies. This could have delayed or altered the onset of the American Civil War. Part 4. Global Impact. A Changed World. 1. Britain's continued global domination. Without losing the American colonies, Britain would have maintained its position as the dominant global superpower. The British Empire would have had control over a large chunk of North America, and the prosperity of the colonies would have contributed to Britain's growing wealth and influence. Britain's continued strength in the Americas could have had massive repercussions on world history. The fate of European colonies, particularly in Latin America, might have changed as the British would have had greater control and influence in the Western Hemisphere. 2. The fate of European revolutions. The American Revolution had served as a model for other revolutionary movements, including the French Revolution and the revolutions in Latin America. If the American Revolution had failed, the ripple effects on global revolutionary movements would have been profound. Other nations might have been less likely to push for independence or democratic reforms, and the overall progress of democracy could have been delayed. The French Revolution, which was heavily inspired by the American experience, may not have happened, or at least not in the same way. This could have delayed the rise of republicanism and changed the course of European history. 3. The United States. A distant dream. Had the revolution failed, the dream of an independent United States might have remained just that, a dream. The concept of democracy and liberty may not have been fully realized in North America for another century or more. The lack of a strong American democracy might have delayed the process of global democratization and the rise of the US as a superpower in the 20th century. Conclusion. A failed American Revolution would have had profound effects on the course of history. The ideas of democracy, liberty, and freedom that arose in the wake of the revolution might have taken much longer to spread across the world. The global balance of power would have shifted dramatically. With Britain remaining the dominant superpower for a longer period, North America would have remained under British control, and the United States as we know it might never have existed.